Today on No Corkage Fee, Wine Tasting Basics Part 2. Hey everyone, and welcome to No Corkage Fee, the modern guide to wine appreciation. Now, today we're going to take a deeper look at some wine tasting skills that you should know. Now, in our last wine tasting video, we covered the basics: swirling, smelling, and tasting. Now, these are great foundational skills to know, but let's get wine nerdy. Let's talk about the look of wine. You see, wine gives the drinker a lot of visual clues that help identify the wine. So first, let's tackle the obvious question: what color is it? Well, it's a little bit more complex than that. You see, wine color can be subtler than just red or white. The shade plays an important role in defining the characteristics of the wine. So in order to see the shade of the wine, there's a simple thing you have to do. Find something white, like a piece of paper or a napkin or whatever, and hold your glass at an angle like this. Now what you're going to notice, and it's super noticeable in red wines, is there's kind of a gradient happening around the edge of the wine. Now that's the shade that we're looking for, and it'll tell us a lot about the wine. You see, broadly speaking, there's about 6 shade categories to look for in red and white wines. There's 3 for each, and they are as follows. So with whites, the first color profile is pale or pale platinum. This color has very little color to it. In fact, it's nearly clear. Wines of this color will usually be unoaked, younger, and from cooler climates. The most common wine that is this color is Pinot Grigio. The next color is referred to as lemon. It has more of a greenish or green coppery hue to it. A lot of white wines fall into this category, but the main one I think of is Sauvignon Blanc. The final white color profile I'll be teaching you is golden or deep gold. These wines have deep golden colors in them. No surprises there. These wines will tend to be later harvest wines and will definitely be aged in oak barrels. That's where the color comes from. The most common example of golden wine I can think of is Chardonnay, as it's often oak aged. This is very useful to know if you're someone like my mom, for example, who doesn't like oaky Chardonnay. People like her should tend to look for the paler whites. Now let's shift to reds. The first red profile is pale. I've also heard it called pale garnet. Just like the pale whites, there is very little pigment change in the gradient of the wine. This tends to point towards wines like Pinot Noir or Gamay. Next we have the medium reds. There's a lot more saturation in the color, but it's very definitely red. These types of wines tend to have higher levels of acidity than other reds. Great examples of these include Merlot or Tempranillo. And the final red color is deep purple, not to be confused with the band. As the name suggests, these wines have more blues and purples in them. They tend to have less acid as well. Great examples of these would be Malbec, Petit Syrah, or Syrah itself. There is a difference between those two, and we'll talk about that at another time. My final color note to remember with reds is that the brickier, redder reds tend to be older than the purple ones. It's a kind of a good little tip when you're comparing red wines. The next thing we want to look at is the consistency of the wine, specifically its viscosity. Now, thicker, more viscous wine tends to have higher alcohol levels and often more residual sugars. Another indicator of higher alcohol content is the wine's legs. Now, this is the phenomenon you may have seen before, where the wine seems to cling to the sides of the glasses and kind of drips down the side. Scientifically, it's known as the Marangoni effect. Now, this is an interesting characteristic of wine, but it's by no means an indicator of quality. However, it can be an indicator of tannins in the wine. What are tannins? Well, tannin is unique to red wines. It can best be described as a sort of textural experience and a slight astringent taste. They come from the grape skins and seeds, which is kind of why they're common in red wines, not white wines. But tannins tend to dry out your mouth and your tongue, and it can kind of make everything feel puckery. But wines that are high in tannin are actually great palate cleansers for things like rich meats and cheeses and even big pasta dishes. That's what makes them the perfect pairing for those things. Now, there are 2 other main wine characteristics you should look out for: sweetness and acidity. Now, since alcohol is produced from sugar, it makes sense that wines will have some degree of sweetness. And they can range from bone-dry wines with hardly any sugar to very sweet wines that have a ton. And that's another wine vocabulary lesson for you. Dry means less sugar. Now, as far as acidity goes, it will make sense that all wines will have a degree of acidity. It's made from fruit, and that's where the tart or even sour flavors can come from in wine. Now, a handy tasting tip to know is that wines in warmer climates that ripen faster tend to have lower levels of acidity, while wines from cooler climates that have slower ripening periods will have higher levels of acidity. So use acidity, sweetness, and tannins as tools to help build your flavor profiles of the wine that you're drinking. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this video helpful, leave it a like, and if you want to stay up to date on more wine education videos, then please subscribe to the channel. If you've had any success or failure stories with wine tasting, please share them in the comments below. So until next time, enjoy the wine.